Welcome. Welcome, Matthew. Welcome to this room. This is my name is Hakim. This is on the stage. I would like to bring up this topic of the criminal cartel with the power in Juba. We've all heard about the recent decision to extend the Revitalised Agreement for resolution of conflict in South Sudan by another 2 years. And we're well aware that over the last 6 years or so, this agreement has not fulfilled any of its benchmarks. It has not delivered on the decision-making process. It has not delivered on the reunification of forces. It has not delivered on its economic benchmarks. And all the indicators, all the benchmarks that were stipulated for this agreement have not been fulfilled. So if your task with a responsibility and given the task of implementing the agreement and you fail to implement the agreement, you demonstrated that you do not have political will to implement this agreement, then why should we continue to extend yourself in power? The last time they extended themselves in power and made commitments to deliver the benchmarks of the agreement that they signed back in 2018, but they have not delivered, and they have been simply losing resources of the country. They have not managed the public affairs of the country as people who are responsible, who care about the people of the country. The economy of the country has collapsed. People have been going on without salaries for over a year. This is supposedly a government, and we do not agree that this is a normal expectation for a country that has just become, a state in 2011. Now, how many years have gone and we are without a constitution? We're still with a transitional constitution. What does that mean for the country, that our leaders are not elected, they are not held accountable, they fail and they are not accountable, they are not accountable to anybody, they are only accountable to themselves. For how long should we continue to tolerate this? This is intolerable. I would like to sample the views of our people here today, just to get a feel for how people feel about these ongoing transitions, these endless transitions. And what are we going to do about these transitions that have failed? What are we going to do about the constitution making process? Are we going to let this failed transitional government to oversee the constitution making process for the country? So those are all questions, outstanding questions that I would like to raise and have a take on, because we're really going through a very critical time now. to all and sundry, everybody, and most, people know now that these people have been in power all of these years for themselves. They really delivered nothing. They delivered very, very little. They have not, progressed any issue of constitutional import in the country. They have not fulfilled the expectations of the agreement that they signed, and they share power, and it seems like this power has become their source of legitimacy. Just being in power gives you legitimacy, but not the people. So I think there has to be a line. We have to draw a line, whether we look at this as a government or whether we look at this as a criminal cartel, because يعني كل المواصفات بتاعت دولة فاشلة وكل مواصفات بتاعت criminal cartel، المجرمين اللي قاعدين يسيطروا وينهبوا في أموال بتاعت الوطن بتاعت البلد، ده كل المواصفات اللي تنطبق على الزمرة الحاكمة في جنوب السودان في الوقت الحالي. So I think we've got to be very clear about whether we recognize الحكومة ده حاليا we recognize this as a government or we look at this as a criminal cartel, a deep state that is not really interested in the affairs management of the public affairs of the country in a very accountable way. Today we still don't have a democratic space in the country. Today we still don't have independent and free media in the country. Today we still have the gun, the gun class in power as people describe them. And we still have the unknown gunmen who terrorize the people and they are not held accountable. So this is still ongoing. For how long are we going to tolerate this? This is a question. For how long are we going to tolerate this? يعني المسرحية بتاعت Revitalised Agreement بتاعت R-TGONU ده. For how long are we going to tolerate this? So we hope to be starting on this subject soon. We're just waiting for more of our people to join, and then maybe some of the colleagues, and then starting. Welcome everyone. I can see that Hadassah is here with us, Silvana, and Alozio. Yeah, welcome to the room, and also previous. Welcome. You're all most welcome to this room. طبعا يا هو لسه قاعدين نسخن الحجرة شوية ما بدأنا لسه، لكن يا هو طبعا الأوضاع الأوضاع الجارية في البلاد في جنوب السودان في الوقت الحالي زي ما انتم كلكم الأيام ده يا هو مجموعة بتاعت Revitalised Agreement R-TGONU ده هو رياك مachar، سالفا كير، Rebecca Nyandeng, Hussein Abdulbagi, Taban Deng, Waniga, they have decided to put their signature on extending themselves in power, supposedly for another 2 years. And this is done without referring to any consultations with the people. يعني ده بيجت بس consultations كده among themselves as the elites who are party to the Revitalised Agreement. They just make decision on the behalf of the people. يعني حتى بأبسط المقومات ما في عملية استشارية مثلا يطرح السؤال ويطرح القضيه للشعب بتاعتنا. ما حتى البرلمان ذاته ما ناقش الموضوع، يعني it was not even presented in parliament. وحتى مش كده وبس، انه ال constitution would need to be amended to allow for this kind of extension of the transitional period. والناس ذاته خلاص قرفت من ال transitional periods من 200 يا اخي. احنا بدانا من 2018 لغايه حسي، والاتفاقيه دي اساسا ما قدمت حاجه جديده يعني. They have simply contained themselves as a block that is implementing agreement. يعني باسم الاتفاقيه بيقولوا انه احنا قاعدين ننفذ الاتفاقيه ده كل ما في الامر. هم عايزين يقولوا في السلطه عشان يقولوا انه احنا شنو قاعدين ننفذ الاتفاقيه الموقعه في 2018، لكن اساسا على ارض الواقع ما قاعدين ينفذوا اي اتفاقيه. والكلام يتكرر تكرارا ومرارا، يعني انه الناس زي ما عندهم شنو، ما عندهم اراده سياسيه، وبالتالي فشلوا في انه شنو، في انه ينفذوا الاتفاقيه بتاعتهم ده. والاتفاقيه دي طبعا زي ما قلنا وعارفين يعني دي اتفاقيه بتاعت تقاسم السلطه في المجموعات الوقعت على الاتفاقيه دي وكده، لكن ما اكثر من كده. يعني بمعنى اخر انه هم وقعوا الاتفاقيه للتقاسم بتاعت السلطه، وبعد ذاك ما دام في سلطه واحد الناس اتقاسموا سلطه، يعني طيب هيدخلوا السلطه دي كيف؟ They will not leave this power which they have divided among themselves, right? زي القطعه بتاعت الكيكه. الكيكه ده تقطعوا ل4 ولا 5 اجزاء، كل واحد ياخذ حقه وما عاوز ينتهي من الكيكه حقه، عاوز زياده. الكيكه ده كانه بس يقوم يعني كده ربع، يعني الكيك ده بس كده ربع from time to time، ناس بس ياكل 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 كده. ده الحاصل. وما في مرجعيه، ما في حاجه بيسموها مرجعيه للشعب. اوكي، ما في حاجه بيسموها مرجعيه للشعب في جنوب السودان. يعني المرجعيه للشعب ده ما موجود. عشان كده هم المرجعيه بتاعتهم هم انفسهم، يعني هم نهوا المرجعيه. They have become the source of sovereignty. They have become the source of decision making on behalf of the country as a whole. والقضيه الاساسيه اللي احنا كنا بعض مننا رفضنا انه نوقع الاتفاقيه بتاعت السلام المنشطه ده for these very reasons, that in the agreement there is nothing there that defers to the people. يعني ما في مضامين ولا there are no provisions in the agreement to refer to the people at some point through the process of implementation. يعني بس كده هم راحوا ينفذوا الاتفاقية ده بدون مشاركة بتاعت الشعب في العملية دي. يعني they implement the agreement on their own terms. Yes, they can write provisions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever number of provisions that are written in the agreement. This is just to buy time for them to stay in power. ده كل ما في الأمر. يعني these people signed this agreement to make this agreement a tool in their hands to stay in power. لأنه ما حيكون عندهم أي حاجة ثانية، بس يقولوا إنه إحنا عندنا الاتفاقية قاعدين ننفذ الاتفاقية، وفي نفس الوقت ما بينفذوها، ولا عندهم شنو، ما عندهم إرادة سياسية في إنه يطبقوا الاتفاقية. They don't have that political will. They don't have political will to implement this agreement. لكن conveniently the agreement allows them to stay in power. This is the main issue. The central issue is that the agreement provides a source of in between quotes a source of legitimacy for them to stay in power. ده العيب الكبير بتاع الاتفاقية ده. كويس؟ يعني الاتفاقية ده كان ممكن يكون عنده شنو؟ يكون عنده نهاية، ونهاية hard stop. يعني it doesn't have to be extended beyond. It cannot be extended and should not be extended beyond its tenure. احنا كان قلنا له الاتفاقيه ده كان المفروض تكون مده بتاعتها 5 سنوات، المفروض تكون 5 سنوات hard stop. That's it. But if you fail to implement this agreement, then you cannot just take people on a ride. هناك حق. Where do you get your right and legitimacy to extend the agreement in the first place? Right? Without going to the people. ما كان ممكن هيكون في there's another alternative way of going about the extension of the agreement. Right? لكن ما ممكن انه الاتفاقيه ده يمدد just ب يعني decision بتاعت مجموعتين او مجموعات معينه في الاطراف اللي في الاتفاقيه ده بيتفقوا فيه مع انفسهم ويقولوا انه they consult themselves in order to extend power to extend themselves in power. ما ممكن. How a state cannot be run like that. A state cannot be run like that. واحنا عارفين انه تداعيات الكلام ده كله يعني the consequences of this is that you as the people you don't have recourse to anything to redress this situation. يعني ما في provision which allows participation of the people in this. Like say for example, if the members of the Revitalised Agreement think that the agreement should be extended, or rather the حكومة بتاعتهم يعني to be extended, right? Then there should also be a provision about consulting the people about this. عشان الناس تقدر تكون عندها دور، لكن هسه شنو؟ دور بتاع الشعب ما في بتاتا يعني. There is no role for you as the people. There is no role. Absolutely no role for you to play في العملية ده. كويس؟ So the government can extend itself for as long as it wants under whatever circumstances and they are not held accountable. واحنا كنا بنطالب كان في الاول في الزمن بتاع التوقيع بتاعت الاتفاقيات احنا كنا بنقول انه احنا نرجع الشعب هي تكون المرجعيه بتاعتنا لانه شنو؟ الشعب ممكن تقدر تقول الكلمه الفاصله. The people can have a final say on this. And it was not impossible for the entirety of the agreement to be subject to the will of the people. لأنه أساسا أي حكومة المفروض تبقى شنو؟ تبقى subject to the will of the people. لكن هل الأطراف الحسي في الحكومة ده هم are they the will of the people? They don't represent the will of the people. They are not the will of the people. They are not representing the will of the people. The parliament is not representative of the will of the people. These are all appointees of الأطراف دي. يعني they're appointees of these political parties, political organizations. They are members of these political organizations, and it is because of this that they are in parliament. It's not because of the people elected them to represent their views in parliament. No. So وبالتالي ده اتفاقية بتاعت الأحزاب. دي اتفاقية بتاعت الأحزاب السياسية الموقعة على السلام، على اتفاقية بتاعت السلام. لكن ده ما اتفاقية بتاعت الشعب. It's a huge difference. It's a big difference between an agreement of the people and the agreement of the elites, agreement of political parties. These are two different things. احنا لما شاركنا في الريفراندوم when we participated in the referendum, it was the people, it was by the act of the people. So the state came into existence as a consequence of the will of the people. It did not come into existence as a consequence of the will of Salva Kiir, the will of Riek Machar, or the will of Wanige, or Taban Deng, or Nyandeng. No, Juba Sudan did not come into existence because of these individuals. Juba Sudan came into existence as a state because of the will of the people. And these groups now in Juba, they no longer refer to this. They would not want to talk about it. They would not even want to raise this in parliament. ما عاوزين يتكلموا عن القضية بتاعت أنه جنوب السودان came into existence as a result of the will of the people, which was exercised in a referendum. كان في referendum, في referendum, which on the basis of which, the legitimacy for the emerging or coming into existence of South Sudan as a state came from. بمعنى آخر احنا بنقول انه شنو؟ سيادة مصدر بتاعته الشعب. في قضايا مصيرية سيادة مصدر بتاعته الشعب. وبالتالي كان في إجماع كلنا among ourselves as South Sudanese to go to a referendum and to cast our vote and have our final say about our status as to whether we want to continue to be part of Sudan or want to come into existence on our own as an independent state. So these were the critical decisions in the whole history of our struggle. This was where it all culminated. This is where it all came to. It all came to casting the vote in our right to self-determination. And as a result, how we existed and we emerged and existed as a state, as a new state in the world. كويس؟ ما ده كان اهو النقطة الأساسية، النقطة المهمة. لكن شوف الحرامية ديل والاس بي ال ام ديل بعدك ما أدوا أي اعتبار لتأسيس بتاع الدولة. الدولة ما اتأسست أساسا. عشان كده احنا في شنو؟ في محبات أو مطبات بتاعت شنو؟ التحول والانتقال من مرحلة دي لمرحلة ذاك في حكومات انتقالية وبدستور انتقالي. We have been going through a journey of transitions, through many transitional arrangements and extensions and so on. From 2011 to now, over a decade, right? More than a decade now, we have been going through transitions. And the latest one now is this proposition of this failed government wanting to, to maintain itself in power for another 2 years. And this premises that this period will give them time to complete the implementation of the agreement. ومش كده وبس، وصل بهم غرور. They have become so immune to public, dissent, to public, outcry, to public discontent. And you can see, for example, واحد زي مارتن إيليا كده بيمشي يتكلم انه هم they were assigned by God or assigned by the Bible to be leaders of this country. I mean, the way it بيحصل. You see, and he can't prove it. He just talks like لأنه ما في accountability. عشان كده الواحد بيلقى نفسه انه هو عاش الفترة دي كله، السنوات اللي فاتت دي كله he was like just held to no account at all by anyone. كويس؟ عشان كده بقى بيتشدق. they start to come and utter this nonsense. انه احنا we're assigned by by the Bible to be the leaders of this country or to be the leaders in government. And ده بيجي من وين? Who is Martin Elia to talk about being assigned by the Bible? Right? ما هو كان جاء مع الناس NCP ده مع ناس بونا مالوال وكده. Right? بونا مالوال بيجا هنا بيجا اسم شنو ده؟ بيجا بايبل الأورجنايزيشن بتاعته بتاع South Sudan Democratic Forum. Was it assigned by the Bible? Which Bible? When? Father Othoka is laughing at Christians, right? He can quote the Bible and say whatever he likes, right? It's not offensive. It's not offending to Christians. You, the public, do you really, is there someone who represents the best interests of the people, the best interests of the public? That is wrong. The mujrim, he doesn't want to be held accountable. He can say whatever he likes without a foundation, without substance. When? Where? Which Bible assigned Martin Elia to be a leader of the government in South Sudan? Or any of them? Those who have signed to the extension of the R-TGONU by another 2 years. وانتوا الشعب مين تكون دور كله كله في الكلام. وما احنا كنا بنقول انه وده من ضمن الحاجات المبادئ اللي خلانا ما عملنا شنو ما we did not sign the Revitalised Agreement. احنا كنا بنطرح عنه شنو؟ لانه المشكله الاساسيه اللي جابت الحرب هو الاختلافات اللي حصل في داخل الاس بي ال ام. So SPLM is the source of the civil war in South Sudan. It's the SPLM that is the source of violence and, crisis of government and all of this. The source that to the SPLM, because they could not contain their differences. Sorry. Sorry about that. So, So I was saying that some of us who participated in the talks leading up to the signing of the Revitalised Agreement for the Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan, احنا كنا بنطالب انه شنو؟ نبتعد من شنو؟ نبتعد من شراكه في اللي هو اللي اسمه شنو؟ التقاسم بتاعت السلطه. We have to distance ourselves from the power sharing arrangements, because we say the source of conflict in the SPLM needs to be addressed and deferred to the people, because the people are the final arbiters of this. احنا المفروض نركز على شنو؟ ما نركز على الشخصيه بتاعت سالفا كير والشخصيه بتاعت رياك ماشار and then we kind of like reward try to contain their differences and say therefore bring them to kind of enter into power sharing arrangements بين الاطراف ده. احنا كنا بنقول انه شنو؟ احنا الدوله بتاعتنا ما اتاسست. Our country has yet to establish its constitution. It has to formulate a constitution, because until now we have not gone through the process of constitution making. So the focus should be on constitution making, not on power sharing. لأنه power sharing will take us in the direction of wasting time over the next 4 or 5 years in trying to bring these conflicting parties together and making them to work together and so on and so forth, which means that we're giving more priority to resolving the differences between SPLM leaders rather than giving preference and priority to the country and to the people. So we have to make a distinction between the people and the political movements. These political movements have resorted to violence, and therefore, by going into an agreement in which they share power, it will not guarantee that they will resolve the differences between them and run the country as the people like. I hope we're dangling this, some of these benefits that the process will allow time for the healing. The process will allow time for for reunification of forces, creation of, like a unified army, and so on and so forth. لكن ده كله في نهاية الأمر ما بيعتمد عليهم هم كويس، ما بيعتمد على الأفراد ده. احنا قلنا انه احنا المفروض نعمل شنو؟ ندي الأولوية للشعب يشارك في عملية بتاعت شنو؟ عملية بتاعت وضع بتاعت الكونستيتيوشن. انه our entire focus should be on the constitution making process, in which our people participate in this constitution making process, and the institutions that are subsequent to it, the institutions that were created by the constitution making process. وحتى بعد ذلك هنا نرجع للelections on the basis of a new constitution, and this new constitution will then determine who the leaders that enjoy the mandate of the people are, who would be empowered by the constitution to exercise their mandate. وبالتالي it will create the opportunity for these political organizations to go first and foremost to organize themselves and present themselves to the people in future elections. المفروض يكون في حكومة انتقالية، والحكومة الانتقالية ده دوره بيكون شنو؟ دوره بيكون محدود. The transitional government will be a lean government that has a specific mandate, a very specific mandate to organize the constitution making process, to organize the constitution making process, and also to undertake certain expectations like a referendum, the census, وحاجات دي كلها عشان في النهاية احنا نشارك في العملية بتاعت constitution making as a priority. For example, we suggested in a more practical way, we say طبعا جنوب السودان تاريخ بتاعته كان من البداية تكون كشنو 3 مديريات استوائية بحر غزال وعالي النيل. We say, for example, there can be like a constitutional making process that is decentralized in line with these 3 provinces. يكون في عملية بتاعت constitution making في Equatoria في بحر غزال في Upper Nile, and this will be by way of people's constitutional conventions. Here will now remove the whole complex problem that the conflict in the country and make it a constitution making process عشان نقدر نخلي شنو الشعب بتاعتنا في الاستوائية يشارك بالكامل في عملية بتاعت شنو بتاعت الكونستيتيوشن ميكينج. الشعب بتاعتنا في أبر نايل على النيل برضه يشارك شنو في عملية بتاعت الكونستيتيوشن ميكينج، والشعب بتاعتنا في بحر الغزال يشارك في عملية بتاعت الكونستيتيوشن ميكينج. So the focus, the priority should be on constitution making process. And the constitutional convention في الاستوائية مثلا ولا في بحر الغزال ولا في أبر نايل يقوم يعمل شنو؟ يعمل تزكية أو يعني to elect people's representatives to a constituent assembly في الفترة الانتقالية دي. يكون في شنو؟ في elections that members, people's representatives mandated by the people in Equatoria and Upper Nile and Bahrazal يعينوا شنو؟ يعينوا أو electing يختاروا شنو؟ ممثلين بتاعتهم لشنو؟ للجمعية التأسيسية. So our people in Equatoria, Upper Nile and Bahrazal will elect the people's representatives to the Constituent Assembly. They will also elect the people's representatives to the organs of the transitional period. Can hear organs which are legislative or other organs which are executive. كده انت بتكون عندك direct flow of sovereignty from the people بالتساوي from Equatoria, from Upper Nile and Bahrazal عشان نقدر نشغل مثلا الانستتيوشنز الاورجنز اللي هتكون مثلا احنا بنحتاج له لاداره بتاعت المرحله الانتقاليه. That was our proposal. We believe that we should follow the example of the referendum. لانه في referendum احنا we defied our people and our people participated directly in this process. So why should we not use the same model, which is people driven, which will generate the most consensus. And احنا نكون عندنا عملية دستورية, constitution making process, which will now focus minds just on the constitution making process and the organs of the transitional period. كده تكون عندنا direct mandate from the people in order to run the transitional period. كويس؟ بعدين القيادات السياسية ده they would have been made subject to the will of the people. They would have been made subject to, including all of these political movements, they would have been made subject to the will of the people through the constitution making process. That way we have a link between the transitional period, the people, and the organs of the transitional period. وبالتالي the people who will run the transitional period. So there will be a direct link from the people to the organs of the transitional period. And that way, ما كان هيكون في فرصة بتاعت failure that those who are elected by the people would fail to implement, the mandate of the people. ما كان هيحصل. لكن بمجرد ما انه انت if you have moved away from this process, you have not made yourself strategically aligned to this process, then you end up just being reliant on the will of the political parties that signed the agreement. And the will of these political parties that signed agreement are subject to certain calculations. Yeah, you have all seen over the last 5-6 years or more, okay? There is one dominant political organization that is controlling the affairs of the state. قروش يتصرفوا فيه يسرقوا القروش بدون accountability. There are no public tenders, so they control the market, they control the money supplies, and they exercise, power with impunity. ما عندهم مساءلة، عندهم national security that is not subject to the will of the people, that is operating outside of the rule of law. الحاجات دي كلها. فده الحاصل. This is what's happening. You see, because you let those who do not have the mandate of the people to operate and run the state. وهم ما عندهم نية أساسا كان في المقام الأول. They do not have political will to engage and involve the people because that will make them subject to the people. بالتالي they didn't want to be subject to the will of the people. They just want to operate in isolation by deals among themselves. وده اللي حصل لغاية اليوم. And today you can see that they just group themselves. They go and sit behind the scenes, and then they come up with a decision saying we're extending ourselves again in power. بدون عودة للشعب, بدون deferring to the people. And this is what we have, a failed state. ما في guarantees انه الناس زي هيضعوا لكم دستور, هيضعوا constitution, هيلبي تطلعات بتاعت الشعب. Because it will also be subject to the same deals. It will be subject to, a constitutional power sharing. Who will stop them if they want to go and do that? Because they are simply just exercising, decision making without being subject to, accountable to anybody. ما هو المفروض الناس اللي هيضعوا constitution المفروض تكون عندهم ناس اساسا elected by the people. We don't have this now. This is an appointed parliament, and there is no constituent assembly. And constituent assembly is meant to be created by the will of the people because it will have elected representatives of the people to pass and deliberate and pass any constitution. ده ما هيكون حاصل. طيب احنا هنشارك كيف؟ انتوا كشعب هتشاركوا كيف في العملية دي؟ So your power has been alienated. Your rights have been alienated. And that's why we'll continue to have this state of failure, state of transitions without end. وده كله يعني حسي لما تشوف سرقة بتاعت الأموال بتاعت الدولة. الدولة العميقة يعني this deep state. You can see how the money from oil is used without accountability. We can see how many ministers of, the ministers that are finance, only from one tribe, one after the other, from one tribe. أخذ قيادة بتاعت الجيش اخذ قياده بتاعت بوليس، اخذ قياده بتاعت الداخليه. All these institutions, all these key institutions in the country are in the hands of a political tribal elite, and they are not subject to the will of the people. They are not subject to any oversight. لأنه البرلمان ذاته ما عنده ما عنده mandate, and they can ignore the so-called parliament because they appointed this parliament to represent their interests. They did not appoint this parliament to represent the will of the people. They appointed this parliament to represent the will of the parties to the agreement. وبعدين الواحد لما يكون في سلطة حاسس زي ما حاسس هم في سلطة زي عاوزين how would they want it's better for them to be in government because there's no accountability وبيقدر يكون عندهم access to government and public resources without being held accountable by anyone. وبالتالي there is a conflict of interest. There's a conflict of interest that they want to continue to be in power. And it's easier and better for them to extend themselves in power rather than to be outside. So there is no such thing called as opposition. Hatta IO, SPLM, IO, he's not an opposition anymore. He's part of the government. All of these parties, واحدين بيسموا أنفسهم South Sudan Opposition Alliance Movement, some of them so other political parties, and whatnot. Okay? Others say that they are in government. SPLM in government. يعني كأنه بقى شنو؟ هم أساسا يعني جزء لا يتجزأ من الحكومة. By design. So all of these considerations, all of these, processes that they support to maintain themselves in power, they are illegitimate. ده الحقيقة يعني. They are illegitimate and they are just really بيلعبوا على أموال بتاعت الشعب ومقدرات بتاعت الشعب, and they give no, they give it, they they don't give a damn to anybody, right? They don't give a damn to anybody, and they can بيتفوقوا أشياء الألفاظ زي مارتن إليا ده, like Martin Elia, who enters disrespectful, offensive statements which are not even true. They can claim themselves to be anything under the sun. فبالبساطة النازل كلهم حرامية. They are criminals because they are not really operating within the law. They are not operating within the law. We have not seen them operating within the law. And they have brought the country to shambles. So فما في شرعية. النازل ما عندهم شرعية. For the last decade or so, they have not been subject to any, election process to renew their mandate in power. If we think in terms of the 2010 elections, لغاية هسي, and the transitions that have taken place. So where do they get the authority from? Al authority that agreement is more important than the authority of the people. The foundation of the state ذاتها وجود بتاعت الstate is subject to the will of the people. إذا كان الناس زي ما يهمهم أنه يكونوا تحت إمرة بتاعت الشعب ولا مثلا يعملوا بكلمة بتاعت الشعب الفاصلة, then what legitimacy do they represent? They don't represent legitimacy at all. They are not legitimate leaders. احنا بنقول لمارتن إليا, you are not a legitimate leader. You have not even been elected. مارتن إليا ده ما الحناية بتاعته ده بيعتمد على سالفا كير وبيعتمد على ناس بونو مالوال والجماعة دي. هل Bonamanuanu is the people? Salva Kiir is the people? No. وبالتالي he doesn't have a mandate from anybody. ما عنده mandate ولا even subjected himself to any form of election. And I think the last time he probably participated in election, he was not elected. Like he was later appointed by Salva Kiir. فعشان كده احنا بنشوف انه الناس زي القيادات دي كلها ما بتمثل صوت بتاع الشعب, and they don't represent us, and we should do something about it. The people should do something about it. I know there's a huge discontent in South Sudan, in the different regions, Equatoria, Bahr el-Ghazal, Upper Nile. People have seen the failures of this طاقم بتاعت المجرمين ده, كويس؟ هم first of all, they don't hold anybody accountable. They are operating outside of the rule of law. They do not respect the will of the people. طيب احنا, why should we respect them? Why should we give them the benefit of the doubt? We should not be giving them the benefit of the doubt. We should call them by the spade, by their name, spade a spade. الناس زي حرامية, حتى حكومة بتاعت حرامية, دي حكومة بتاعت مجرمين, كويس? They cannot differentiate themselves. They cannot say that they are one. حسي ما اتخذوا قرار جماعي. يعني they all agree they want to be in government. They all agree they want to extend themselves in power. ما في واحد منهم قال لا احنا we don't want to be in government because this is not the right way to go about it. None of them said that. الحاصل انه هم بالاجماع كان قالوا مثلا بقيادات بتاعتهم اجمعوا على اساس انه يدوا انفسهم ثاني تجديد في السلطه لسنتين, وده يعني انه هم فضلوا الاكستنشن. خليك حتى لو فرضنا انه هم طبعا فشلوا في انه يضعوا الدستور, فشلوا في انه مثلا يعني يضعوا الدستور كمبدا اساسي لاقامه بتاعت elections. اوكي, معناه شنو؟ معناه هم هسي ما بيعملوا من منطلق بتاع كونستيتيوشن جديد, لانه ما عملوا الكونستيتيوشن لذاته, ما في كونستيتيوشن عملوا, كويس؟ وفي نفس الوقت they have given themselves a mandate by themselves, not by the people, to extend themselves in power. That did not even follow the process. وحتى لو كان قلنا مثلا بالطريقه بتاعت القانون, what does the law say about extending themselves in power? Right? Is it just a matter of agreement among themselves, or should it be subject to a legal process? A legal process might require that في stipulation بيقول انك انت عاوز to extend yourself in power as a government. لكن الحكومة cannot just sit like that. الحكومة ما بيجلس ويقوم يقرر انه خلاص they want to give themselves 2 more years in power. Where do they get that from? البروفيجن بتاعت الكلام ده جاي من وين؟ كون انه الحكومة تجلس وتقرر في النهاية بتاعت الجلسة وتقول انه هم شنو؟ They want to give themselves 2 more years in power. Where? Where is that provision in the law? Which constitution are they using for that? هي الconstitution. دستور يا تو. هذا الدستور الانتقالي. لا أصلها أسئلة ما سنجاوب عليهم. حتى لو فرضنا أنه مثلا there is a process, a legal process for this government to extend itself in power. المصدر بتاعته شنو؟ Where is the source of that? Presumably, the source of that will be the Revitalised Agreement. And الأطراف بتاعت الاتفاقية ممكن عن طريق مشورة فيما بينهم لظروف مثلا طارئة وكده that they can consider to, for example, extend themselves in powers. ده اللي كان الحصل المرة اللي فاتت. When they extended themselves in power for 2 years, right? Was the constitution amended to reflect that? The transitional constitution, was it amended to reflect that? So that it is legally founded? بمعنى بتاعت قانونية بتاعت البروسيس. The legality of that process. To make sure that it is aligned to the constitution. Now, the government, the revitalized government of national unity was based, when it was created, was based on the revitalized agreement, which was incorporated for the constitution, for transitional constitution, and then on the basis of that, a new revitalized transitional government of national unity was created. So the revitalized agreement for resolution of conflict in South Sudan was first incorporated into the transitional constitution. After it was incorporated in the transitional constitution, then a government, a new R-TGONU would be created, subject to that incorporation of amendment of the transitional constitution. It draws its source of legality from the constitution, from the amended constitution. Like, does that apply at all the times? بعد ذاك دي هتبقى هو president and the sitting government when it comes to its expiry, it can also decide again to change the constitution عشان يديه فرصة بتاعت انه يبقى حكومة انتقالية تانية للمرة الثانية وللمرة الثالثة. So, in other words, there is a change. If we follow it from the start, there is a change in the constitution, in the transitional constitution. The constitution, the transitional constitution was amended to incorporate the R-TGONU, or rather the revitalized agreement. It was changed to incorporate the revitalized agreement. And then a government was created out of it. Now, when the first transition was introduced again after the expiry of the formal period, was the transitional constitution amended? If it wasn't amended, why? And should it not be amended? Or is it just sufficient, or is suffice for the ruling elites to just agree among themselves without a formal process and then just continue business as normal? وحسي هنا في الوقت الحالي هل حصل تغيير ل transitional constitution to allow for the creation of another transitional government or for the continuation of the same? Even if it's continuation of the same, does that not require a change to the transitional constitution or amendment to the constitution? I mean, the amendment to the transitional constitution. ما هو أساساً we're just making an argument here, a legal argument, and this is, this is where we then try to bring the issue that inclusion of the people as the source of authority, the source of power, and the source of legitimacy. And الحكاية ده ما حاصل كويس. لكن الحاصل انه شنو؟ احنا عندنا transitional constitution which was amended to incorporate the revitalized agreement, and on the basis of which then a transitional government was created. And that transitional government ran for a number of years, 3 years or more or so, and failed to deliver. And it was then extended. Now, when this agreement was extended, or rather the R-TGONU was extended, did that not require amendment to the transitional constitution? And now it's second, in the second instance, another transition. Does that not require amendment to the transitional constitution? Has that amendment been made? Just, for their own sake of being within the law, of being within the context and the legal framework of the transitional constitution. هل ده حصل يا جماعة؟ حصل amendment to the constitution? Is it going to take place? Is the amendment going to go ahead in order to incorporate this new transitional arrangements into the constitution? ولا ما بيحتاج؟ الconstitution ما بيحتاج لتغيير. Because every government that comes is meant to be mandated by the people. طيب فقلنا R-TGONU was not mandated by the people. It was mandated by the transitional constitution. That's one. Second, when another extension took place, it was not mandated by the people, but it was mandated by arrangements that revitalized agreement. But even that is suspect. And now we also see it for a third time. You can think of this as, even though it may be the same government, the same individuals, but the change is also a different matter. And it's happening without the mandate of the people. So in all of the three instances, the change to the transitional government is happening without the mandate of the people. 3 مرات ولا 4 مرات. All these changes are taking place to move from one transitional period to another transitional period to another transitional period. It's happening without the mandate of the people. And I think it's only on the basis of this that we can say this government is illegitimate. This government is illegitimate. ما عندهم شرعية. And they are not operating within the rule of law. They are just mandating themselves by themselves. It's not that they are mandating themselves by the will of the people. No, they are mandating themselves by themselves. So we should treat this government as illegitimate, as illegal, and these are criminals. They are simply committing a crime. And there may be provisions in the constitution of what is the nature of the crime that they're committing, if it doesn't border on treason, right? So I think it is very important for our people to know that this is a criminal cartel which is now running the affairs of the country. This is a criminal cartel that is not subject to the will of the people. This is a criminal cartel that is not willing to be subject to the will of the people, because they have not even taken the opportunity to sit back and say, hey, look, can we just stop here and do something different, rather than just sticking to the arrangement for maintaining themselves in power. اخذ مثلا زي ناس الايو، ما ناس الايو ديل بتاعت SPLM in opposition. SPLM in opposition, if we think of it as SPLM in opposition, although they are not, of course, they are not really in opposition. They are in government. They are in this illegitimate government. And they would want to deceive you, and I've heard them talking in many clubhouse rooms that it's better to extend, the R-TGONU by another 2 years so that people can be in, they can prepare and finish the outstanding and pending task وكده عشان الاسم شنو ده الاتفاقية ده ينفذ. But if you look at the other side, they would want to argue that they are doing it for the best interests of the people, for the best interests of the country, but doing so through an illegal process. Right? They are doing so through an illegal process. So they are equal partners in this. Let's not look at the IO as being different from the government, SPLM in government. They are operating from the same principle. It serves their best interest to be together in the government. They need each other for them to continue to be in power. Yeah, for example, Salva Kiir cannot do without Riek Machar, or Riek Machar cannot do without Salva Kiir. So it's unthinkable for any of these two partners of the Revitalised Agreement to decide that madam there is no political will. We have demonstrated that ما في political will اساسا للتنفيذ بتاعت الاتفاقيه ده. فما في داعي المفروض احنا نواصل تاني مع نفس البارتنر في العمليه بتاعت التنفيذ بتاعت الاتفاقيه. Okay, the IO would have probably thought that it's better for them not to continue this partnership because this partnership is not working, it's not delivering the expectations, and the agreement has failed on several occasions now to be implemented. طيب ما خلاص لانه الشعب ذاته ما قاعد يشارك. طيب انت اما تخلي البارتنر بتاعتك ده وكون مع الشعب لانه الشعب ما قاعد يشارك في العمليه دي. Why don't you also vacate your position في الحكومه ده وتكون مع الشعب؟ تكون مع الشعب اللي ما قادر ما عنده دور في الاتفاقيه ده، مش كده؟ You would have thought انه the IO would come out of government, would resign their position in government to be with the people. كويس؟ لكن افضل لهم زي هم بيشوفوا افضل لهم الخيار بتاعت انه هم يكونوا في الحكومه. Their preference is to be in government. Their preference is not to be with the people and not to participate in this illegal government. لانه احنا ممكن الواحد ممكن كان يتصور انه تنظيم كآيو كده اذا كان عنده وزن وعنده ثقه في الشعب يخلي الحكومه ده ويكون مع الشعب، وهم عارفين انه الشعب ما قاعد يشارك في العمليه ده. كويس؟ يكونوا مع الشعب وما يشاركوا في عمليه بتاعت الحكومه ده. كويس؟ ويشوفوا سلفا كير هيعمل شنو؟ يعني سلفا كير هيلقى الحمايه بتاعته الشرعيه بتاعته ده من وين؟ ما هو قاعد يلقى الشرعيه بتاعته من الاتفاقيه ده، مش كده؟ طيب why don't you just partnership ده خليه وخلي سلفا كير يعمل الحاجه اللي هو عايز يعمل. Because he would also be rendered illegitimate. ما هو انت عندك ورقه بتاع الضغط، مش كده؟ عندك ورقه بتاع الضغط بتاعت عندك شنو؟ If you don't participate, Salva Kiir will not be able to do anything. He cannot run the country on his own, right? البرامج دي كلها بتاعت الاتفاقيه ده يعني بيحتاج لشنو؟ بيحتاج ل participation of all of these parties. So if you deprive Salva Kiir of your participation, then this government is going to collapse. And if this government collapses, it's worth it, it's better, because ما الحكومه اساسا ادوا فتره، انتوا ادوكم فتره بتاعت 6 سنوات وماشي اكتر ماشي ل 10 سنه هسي. You have not done anything. So what is the benefit of having this cartel to continue to steal the resources of the country and not really make any progress or register any progress? And our people today live in abject circumstances in abject conditions that أنه الناس ما عندهم حتى salaries ما عندهم. They come أكثر من 12 سنة هسه ناس ما عندهم قروش. So why would you want to continue this government? Why would you want to let this government go on? ليه؟ معناها أنت ما بتقف مع الشعب أساسا. You don't value the people. You don't consider the people to be the source of legitimacy. مش كده؟ فده الحاصل. إذن المصلحة الشخصية بالنسبة لرياك ماتشار هو أنه يظل يكون فايس بريزيدنت وسلفا كير يكون بريزيدنت وهيكون عندهم mutual benefits to continue to benefit from the state resources ويحكموا كما يشاءوا. وحتى لو كان ما نفذوا الاتفاقية تاني still it's better for them to be in government rather than to be outside the government. ده الحاصل. This is the logic. So SPLM is there for the SPLM-IO is there for their own interest, not the interest of the shop. And of course, Salva Kiir, Dito, you can't say that Salva Kiir is there for the interest of the people. No, he's not. He's not been paying people their salaries for the last year. How can he continue to be, serving the best interests of the people or of the country? He doesn't. Mind the best interests of the people at heart. Mind. They don't put the people first. Otherwise ما كان ما حيكون في نهب أموال الدولة الجاري على ينكم يا تاجر كده مش كده؟ النهب بتاع أموال بتاعت الدولة is going on. So في لبسة بتاعت like this لبسة بتاعت أنه أنت your legitimate ده اللباس اللي هم عاوزين يلبسوها عاوزين يلبسوا أنفسهم في جسم بتاعت شنو؟ في جسم أو شكلية بتاعت حاجة كده مشروع يعني عشان يكون عندهم بعض الشرعية وبيستخدموا طبعا الاتفاقية ده كأساس للشرعية وكمصدر بتاع الشرعية بتاعته. فدي القضايا اللي احنا المفروض نهتم بها كشعب و we have to really work, all of us, we have to work from the position of saying that these parties to the agreement, first, they have failed. They cannot be rewarded to continue to choose when to implement which provisions of the agreement and which ones to delay, and then complain that they don't have enough time. So those are the kind of issues that we should focus, and unify the different shades of opinion for communities بتاعتنا عشان الناس تجيب ضد النظام. ده نظام ما بيستحق to lead you, to preside over you, and to continue the way they have been doing for the last 7 years or so now. So I think I would like to maybe give opportunity for others who here in the room to join us and to participate and give their opinion as well. Bella, if you want to come, you're welcome. Sylvia? Yeah, welcome, guys. If anybody has something to say or would like to, chip in, you're most welcome. Just a quick recap. For those who might have just joined us, welcome Tombe, welcome Lako. You're all most welcome. افتكرنا قلنا يا أخ نصير قضية بتاعت الاكستنشن اللي حصل قريب ده from 2 or 3 different perspectives. The first perspective is that this extension has not been premised on مصدر بتاعت أنها تكون عندها شرعية ناعمة أو مصدر بتاعت الشعب. So it is not an extension that is based on the will of the people, because as you all know, none of our people have participated in any form or shape in this extension to the Revitalised Agreement for Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan and its, and its offshoot, the government, the R-TGONU. الشيء الثاني أنه يعني all the way from the start الحكومة أساسا طبعا كانت بنا يعني اتكونت على مبدأ بتاع التقاسم بتاعت السلطة. التقاسم بتاعت السلطة بين أطراف بتاعت الاتفاقية، الناس اللي وقعت على الاتفاقية. الناس اللي وقعت أو الأطراف اللي وقعت على الاتفاقية ده if you just look at it, if I and you have a common mutual benefit from تقاسم بتاعت السلطة, from the power sharing, if you are both served well by the principle of power sharing, then why would you want to let go? You wouldn't want to let go. Even when you fail, you don't have the courage. None of you has the courage to say, no, I was here to fulfill certain public expectations. And these public expectations have failed beyond doubt. And therefore, I would rather not continue this arrangement. Lakin, none of these parties have argued that way. They have not looked at themselves as fulfilling certain public expectations, accountabilities, and responsibilities within a specified time period. And if there was any form of benefit of the doubt in the first extension of the R-TGONU, on the grounds that they needed that extension to implement certain provisions, the agreement, yet they still failed to implement that, and now they want another extension. Is that a dafil asasi here? Is the conflict of interest? It is not the public interest that is driving this extension. It is the conflict of interest that is driving this extension. Because they seem to be all served by the mutual benefits of continuing to have access to public resources in the name of the government. Right? They don't want to vacate their position. They don't want to do public, like consultations even with the people. لأنه كان ده ممكن يبقى شنو إنه يكون في نقطة بتاع التحول. إنه إحنا فشلنا في المرة الأول وحصل فشلنا في المرحلة الثانية برضه في الفرصة في أجل in the second round. Then we should go back to the people. إحنا عارفين صح إن اتكلمنا إنه مثلا هم حتى فشلوا في إنه يعني to create the conditions for free fair elections. Right? We know that they were not capable of preparing the country for free and fair elections. They were not capable of, for example, preparing the country to have a permanent constitution. They were not capable of doing that. They were also not capable of fulfilling the benchmarks of the agreement, like unification of forces and so on. They were not capable of doing that. they needed 24 months. Still 24 months that father, and they have not fulfilled any of this, and they still want another 24 months. ده معناه شنو؟ under normal circumstances لو كان في accountability, a process of accountability, then they would be held accountable. لكن لأنه ما في process that accountability, then they are just accountable to themselves. And being accountable to themselves is a conflict of interest. It constitutes a conflict of interest. Because الحكومة ما يسمى بالحكومة, and they have no any other motivation to consult the people, for example, that what do we do? We have failed twice, we have failed 3 times, and now we need to consult the will of the people. And because we have failed to deliver, we have failed to accomplish what was defined for our role as tasks of the agreement. وبالتالي it should be subject to accountability. لكن ما في accountability لأنه ما في nothing is built into the agreement for them to be held accountable to the people. القضية بتاعت accountability to the people is only a promise in terms of the elections that will be held in the future when we have a constitution and a permanent constitution be put in place, and then people go to elections, and that's the time when they will be held accountable. And so they can push this, target forward by another 2 months, 2 years last time, and now push it again by 2 years, and so on. Lakin, the question is, do you really trust that this government will deliver in another 24 months? If they haven't delivered in the last 24 months, how are they going to deliver in 24 months, in the next 24 months? So I think, of course, there is a question that constitutional vacuum. The constitutional vacuum is actually now the issue. So they would want to somehow just maintain themselves in power on the premise that they are still implementing the agreement, but without guarantees that the agreement will be implemented, even with this extension. But this extension is illegal anyway. It's not aligned to the constitution. This extension is not aligned to the constitution. The constitution is very clear in terms of where the source of authority and legitimacy lay. It lay with the people, and they have not consulted the people, and they have not put in place mechanisms for consultation with the people, and for holding themselves accountable to the people, and for ensuring that there is a flow of sovereignty from the people to the government. ما حاصل الكلام. طيب إذا كان الكلام ده ما حاصل، طيب how are they legitimate? They are not legitimate. They are not a legitimate government. They have not demonstrated that they are capable of fulfilling, their role in public office. يعني إحنا هنحتاج تاني evidence لقدريش يعني. What else? What evidence do we need to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are still acting in the public interest? They are still acting in the interest of the population, in the interest of the people? No, I think they are not. And we have said earlier on, الشغل الحاصل هسي النهب في أموال بتاعت الدولة والتصرف في الأموال بتاعت الدولة وهكذا. ده كلها is backed up with evidence. And the other day شوف يعني زي أخذ زي minister Michael McQueen. Minister Michael McQueen was approved, I think, over $100,000 لأنه قال this will be funeral expenses for his daughter, right? This is what I found in social media. يعني imagine, شوف, by what? But what justifies this? أنا عشان أنا وزير في الدولة و my daughter passed away and then أنا بقدر أتصرف في أموال بتاعت الدولة أطالب 100 وكم ألف دولار for burial expenses. What kind of burial is this? What's all this? ده حسي my crime. ده my إجرام. And then these people want to say that they're leaders of the country, they're leaders of government. طبعا لا. ده إجرام. This is crime, right? They're committing crime in public office. Allowing this scam to go on. Allowing this نهب بتاعت أموال بتاعت الدولة to go on. And Michael McQueen is a member of this government, right? أرجع للورا بس بسيط. في حاجات كتير حصلت, right? آخذ زي ناس مارتينيلية بيقول إنه they have been assigned by the Bible. Come on, do you believe that? Any of you can believe this? ده بيتكلم on behalf of who? On whose behalf is he saying this? يعني شوف how the impunity, the level of impunity in South Sudan in public office. Isn't this evidence enough that these are criminals running the country? ما هم المجرمين أساسا يعني. They are criminals who are running the country with impunity. وبالتالي احنا بنصل لخلاصة بتاعت انه ده حكومة بتاعت مجرمين. ده حكومة بتاعت مجرمين. A government is a collective thing, right? They have all been defending the government because they are members of the government. مش كده؟ Then when they commit a crime, then they are all criminals together. Because they let this scam to go on. Nobody stands against this crime that is committed by the government. ما هو السرقة بتاعت $100,000 بطريقة زي ده وين ده قانون ده؟ في قانون انه الوزير لما ابنته تموت يدوم $100,000 عشان يسهل بو امور بتاعت حناية بتاعت arrangements بتاعت burial and funeral and all of that. شوف الوزير تكلفة بتاعت الفينرال بتاعته in $100,000. You're talking about hundreds or thousands of $. طيب انت العادي ده الانسان المواطن, why, what's the difference? Is it that just because he's a minister in the government and therefore he's eligible to $100,000 expenses for funeral rites for his daughter? And what about you who is not getting any salary from anybody? You are not being paid your salary. You are struggling to support your family. You may lose your daughter or son. هل انت عندك نفس الحقوق? Do you have the same rights like the minister? That when your daughter passes away or your son passes away, the government will pay you even $1,000. هل ده موجود في القانون؟ مع أساسا إذا كان موجود في القانون بيكون في clarity about بيدفعوا كم وزير بدفعوا كم، كان مواطن عادي بيدفعوا كم، وكان دكتور بيدفعوا كم، كده تكون في تدرج مش كده؟ وكانوا الرئيس بيدفعوا كم؟ expenses بتاعت funeral in South Sudan. ما كده مش كده؟ لكن القانون ده ما موجود. القانون ده ما موجود. قانون اللي قال تدفع قروش $100,000 استحقاق لفينرال ما موجود. طيب ماكوي was eligible for this on what grounds? How is that Michael Makwi is eligible for $100,000 approved as eligible expenses because of funeral of his daughter. نعزيه في قصة بتاعت his daughter. أنا الناس كلها أساسا هيتوفوا يعني كويس. We can sympathize that he has lost his daughter, but this, the expenses cannot be on the public at the cost of the public. مش كده؟ ما لم ينظموا قانون يعني unless there is a law, but if the law is unwritten, then there is no law that supports this expenditure. وده substantiates our claim that this is illegality, this is unlawful, and it can only be classed as a criminal action, right? Which is subject to musa'ala, subject to accountability. This only shows you an example of a minister in government who can loot public resources at will and not under the terms of any law. ده بتسموه شنو؟ هتسموه criminal مش كده؟ هتسموه criminal. فده الحاصل. So this is a government of criminals. This is a criminal cartel of which Michael Makwi is a member of. Martin Elia is a member of. Salva Kiir is a member of. Riek Machar is a member of. Right? They're a criminal cartel. So those are the issues that we want to speak to. لكن طبعا زي ما قلت في الأول جبال، القضية الأكبر هو إنه شنو؟ عدم وجود أي مشورة شعبية لقضية بتاعت شنو؟ تمديد بتاعت الحكومة. فده الكلام اللي احنا كنا عاوزين نسمع منكم آراء بتاعتكم برضو. So if you feel like you want to have something to say about this, please, just raise your hand. You come up here, give your take on this, and get this message out to the people. احنا والله يعني وصلنا مرحلة أصله ما بتقدر توصل، مرحلة بتاعت فوضى في جنوب السودان. واحنا كنا بنقول تكرارا ومرارا ان الدولة بتاعت جنوب السودان ده دولة فشلت أساسا. دولة فشلت يجب أن يعاد فيه النظر يعني. We have to rethink the state. And how do we rethink this state? How do we go about it? If we keep quiet and we are silent about it, معناه شنو؟ become complicit. We become complicit in this illegal state. We are letting this state take root in South Sudan at our own expense. So that is really what I wanted, this room to focus on. We wanted just really to give opportunity for people to talk about it and give their say, their take on these matters. Yeah. فاتفضلوا معنا كان if anybody is interested to come and chip in, you will be most welcome.